Everything Everywhere All at Once.
It was outstanding, incredible,
We
amazing.
loved it, and I'm very, very glad that it did such a sweep at the Oscars.
We had our concerns. We weren't sure. I think we watched the Oscars. We stayed up all night. And when it was announced as Best Picture, we weren't sure.
I was mostly worried because we hadn't watched it before the Oscars. And I always feel like when a film is so overhyped, not only because of the awards, but everybody I know talked about it in a very positive way.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you go in with very high expectations. And I was worried I'd be disappointed because my expectations were super high. Same with Parasite. Same thing that happened.
Yeah.
And it happened in the past that I had very high expectations and then I was like, well, I expected so much more. But I'm very glad to say that it wasn't the case.
It's true. And I think with Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, I genuinely cannot see a flaw.
Yeah. I was thinking about it this morning as well because I'm very, very harsh with my Letterboxd. Follow me on Letterboxd. With my Letterboxd, like, grading, I hardly give a 5. Like, I think there's 5 films or 6 that I've given a 5 to in my life.
Yeah.
Very harsh. And I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, I should give it a 4.5 because that's tops for me. And then I kept thinking, there's no reason. I cannot find one reason why that half a star has to go down.
All the elements of a good movie. So there is a warmth to it. Anyone can watch it. Families can enjoy it. It shouldn't be rated because there's nothing to, even if the subject matter, with a little bit of inspection and investigation, the subject matter can be a bit heavy for the themes. It's handled so beautifully. It feels like it's a fun movie. And if you go to this, if you watch it with the intention of understanding, with sort of like bigger themes they're trying to unpack, you can do it. And you can go into a deeper analysis if you want. But if you're a child or if you're just a teen who wants to enjoy a weird, funny looking, eccentric movie, you won't be disappointed.
That's very true.
You know what I mean?
It can stay surface level and be a good movie.
Exactly.
It doesn't need the extra analysis, even though the extra analysis to me is what makes it. But also, to me, the only thing I will say is very, very specific, and I don't think it should be as much of a negative, in my opinion. But I think it's very action-packed, which I'm personally not a big fan of action movies.
I loved it.
But I didn't mind at all, because the plot is so well thought. It's not like there were random action scenes to me.
Absolutely.
But I think somebody like my mom, hi mom, who's like, I think would really, really like the themes explored and the whole story.
Yeah.
I think, and I like kind of a very, very specific and maybe more target audience, maybe like taken out of the movie when they see so much action. But at the same time, I want to think that they can kind of go beyond that in order to enjoy the film. I don't think that's an issue.
It was so technical, so perfectly executed. The action sequences weren't flat, because I am a big fan of action sequences. I really enjoy watching action movies, but what I noticed as a trend in the past few years, really, they tend to be quite flat and mainstream
and a bit like for the spectacle rather than for the plot. I feel like this was really for the plot. Like
those action sequences were executed so brilliantly, and I know I read the actors have worked with actual experts, and they've been training for a while. So there was a lot of dedication to the movements and the true art and craft of martial arts, and you can tell there is also quite a lot of respect for the culture, for the craft, and for the history of really this art, and it was beautiful to watch, and it was also very creative in the movements. You could tell there was a passion to show something different. And also I loved the fact that the action sequences, they worked quite well with the surroundings, with the environment. It wasn't just a fight body to body, but there is a scene where he used his fanny pack to fight. And it's so fun to watch. It's such a lot of fun. It's beautifully executed. It's interesting. It's innovative. It's not the usual Marvel type of flat fight.
I think one of the beautiful things of Everything Everywhere All at Once is that you really don't know what's going to happen. Like, you have no idea.
So true.
And yet it doesn't alienate you, because it keeps you so... I think because of the plot, it keeps you so hooked, and you're like, I really don't know how this is going to go. Like,
yes.
It could have been so complicated to understand with all the words and the way you travel between words and all of that. But it wasn't. And something like Tenet, or something that... A lot of the things that Christopher Nolan does are theoretically less complicated than this. But for the whole 2 hours and a half of the movie, with Nolan, with Tenet, you're like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand the mechanisms of this. But with Everything Everywhere All at Once, there wasn't a single moment where I was like, I don't understand why this is happening or how this works, because they delivered it so well, and without exposition, it's like they make sure you know the rules to understand the game.
Absolutely, I agree. They built their world so well. And there was at no point I felt confused. At no point I was asking myself, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And even when I asked myself what the hell is going on, it was more with excitement, because it was fun. It was weird. I was asking, what's going on here? But at no point I felt annoyed because I couldn't follow the plot, which I think it's so hard to do.
Yeah.
It's such a hard thing to do. And you're right, there was so little exposition, but yet there was enough sort of like description of the world for you to understand the rules.
They explain it through not the actions, but through the plot. Like,
yes,
you understand. You don't have everything at the beginning. You understand as it goes,
mm-hmm.
and I really like that. And I think it's really a lesson in world building.
Absolutely,
to everybody, like whatever
Absolutely.
You want to do. It's a lesson in world building and how to convey it, because you don't need to create a super complicated system to explain every single thing that happens. You just need to have your rules down and convey them as soon as possible for the audience to understand them, but also not use this device of the not fantastical, but this other word I mentioned,
mm-hmm.
to solve your problems, like a Deus
mm-hmm.
Ex Machina, because that would be boring. And I think that was one of the problems with Tenet that we mentioned before. But you can't use this mystical element as a way to fit your problems, and I don't think they do that. Instead, it creates problems, if anything. It creates chaos and disruption.
They did a masterclass in filmmaking, show and not tell. And even when you were mentioning about, the way they did explain the world that this story lives in, they did it through visuals.
I think in this sense also give credit to the actors, because the way, to me specifically,
really good.
The husband, but everybody, the way you could tell how they switched between this dimension character to this other dimension character to alpha dimension character, it's insane. It's so well done. It's
Absolutely.
Basically as if I was watching different actors with the same face.
It's so true, because they all have the same sort of like aesthetic. They look like the same person, but they are different people in different universes. And when there are scenes where you have the same actor switching on and off, as you mentioned, it's so seamless. You can't notice.
And it's
two
so
different
clear.
people.
It's like that surprised me a lot. It's like the way within the same scene, within the same almost beat of the scene,
mm-hmm.
they do the switch, and it's so immediate.
It's how much fun you can tell they're having. The people working in this movie, you can tell they're having a grand time. They're having so much fun. And even the writers, directors, you could tell they're not taking themselves seriously. They're not pretentious. They edited the entire feature with Adobe Pro. It's insane. They didn't use any CGI. They didn't go...
It's a free software as well.
Exactly. They didn't go bankrupt using visual effects. They did something very simple. They used a tool that is available to worldwide population. Maybe not worldwide population, but to general public. And they managed to create something so beautiful, well constructed, well thought through, very comprehensive as a world building, sort of like narrative. And another thing is not only less is more in this case, go simple and stay true to yourself and have fun, but also the idea that anyone can do art if they have a story
you don't have
to tell.
Spend a ton of money.
And I think one very important element for me that really sort of like, it was very transparent, like I could tell, and I can very rarely tell, is the signature sort of like style of the movie. You can tell there is a very specific personality.
Their own.
Yeah, so unique. It was a great collab, and it's incredible for me because, to me it's incredible because when we listened to their speech at the Oscar, I mean, you could tell they were such two different people.
Yeah.
Two different personalities.
And two different, like, backgrounds as well.
Exactly. And they work so well together. They come from two different cultures.
Yeah.
And they managed to blend that in so beautifully. It's because it's a beautiful story about how you relate with the people you love, how you compromise, how you accept others, how you accept yourself, which is a big part of the movie.
And on that note, we both really like the metaphor of this bagel, which is the nothingness, the kind of personalization that nothing matters, and it's kind of like a black hole that devours everything around it. And
an actual bagel, by the way.
It's an actual bagel.
It's an actual bagel.
And they, on one hand, they could have just used the bagel for the laughs, which they did, but the fact that there's a deeper metaphor behind it just elevates it. But at the same time, because to me the bagel clearly stands for depression and wanting to commit suicide, and the fact that they were able to treat such a sensible and very heavy topic to talk about with not just gently but also with so much care and also in a fun way, by using the metaphor of the bagel but still remaining very, very truthful and also respectful of the topic. It's amazing, and I think the bagel could have gone so easily either into too much laughs or too heavy themes, and they just really kept that balance. That I don't know how they did that. I'm very impressed.
They were very good, because another thing is I had to really get out of the theater and think that through before truly appreciating that was a metaphor for wanting to end your own life and give in on depression, nothingness, nihilism. You really have to think that through. So it means they do, as you said, a really good job at sort of making sure you understand that there is a negative meaning attached to it, but not going too deep in order to not take the sort of like depriving the movie of its essence, which is of entertainment first and foremost. But once you get out of the theater and you really watch the movie and you have a moment to think about it, you truly appreciate how that actually impacts much more complex and really serious
and despite being
subjects.
And despite being a very like entertainment focused film, you can think about it for so long. There's so much to unpack. And the metaphor of the bagel is just the beginning. But I think it's fun and it works, and it's very new. It's like you've never seen that. You've never seen a depression as a bagel.
Absolutely. There are so many levels to this movie. As I said, it's a movie about accepting yourself, accepting the imperfections and flaws of your character, of your life. It's fantastic because to me it's also quite a feminist movie. Our protagonist is a woman who, as any other woman in probably her 40s, 50s, as a mother with a family and a business, is thinking about what could have been of her life if she didn't have a family, if she made different choices. And it's quite beautiful because those are conversations that I think anyone's mother is having. As a mother, and as a woman, you're having this conversation. I feel very plausible that, you have a mother who is in charge of a business. She has to, duel between being a mother, being a wife, and being a businesswoman, and also being her own individual, being her own self with her dreams and hopes. And it's quite daunting for her. It's difficult to reconcile with all these different parts of herself, which just reflects into the multiverse concept of the movie. The fact that she has to split between being who she is and following her dreams, being a good mother, understanding her daughter, being a good daughter herself for her father, and being a good wife that appreciate her husband. And she has to split, right? And this is reflected in the very style of the movie, and I think that's just such a fantastic concept. It's so well done.
I also want to say that I think they played a lot on the cinema itself. Like, there's a fake ending essentially, and I fell for it. And it's just really fun because it's playing with the craft, and it's always enjoyable to see that in a film that wants to be funny. And also, something else I want to mention I think is really important is that a lot of people that I've spoken with that are Asian or especially Chinese have said, not only I've spoken with but also I've seen online, have said this movie is so Chinese, and in a good way, and really represents stories that Chinese people or Chinese descendant people can really relate to. And it's not my place to like bring that into the conversation as much, but I just want to acknowledge that finally we're seeing this representation in big Hollywood films, because with the Oscars and everything, it became kind of like a Hollywood standard, and like it came into the scene in that sense. So I'm just very glad that we're seeing representation not only on the screen, which is essential, but also behind the screen. Some of the criticism, obviously, was that it's too Chinese.
Oh, no, I love
First
that.
First of all, there's no such a thing. Second of all...
First of all, it's racist to say that.
Yeah. You're
racist. But
it's subtitled. It's really easy to still be into the film. You don't need to be Chinese to relate to it.
Also, it feels authentic. It feels like we're actually in... Because this is a Chinese family, and it feels authentic. It feels like I'm actually in their house listening to them speaking. And why the hell would they speak English to them?
If they told me you personally
you
have to
for
the
rate
best
them.
supporting actress, I would have personally voted for the actor who plays Joy rather than Jamie Lee Curtis. But I think they both did a phenomenal job. Because I was a little bit afraid at first that the villain in Joy was gonna be too like
flat, one-dimensional,
too flat and too obvious. But they really had a lot of depth in that, and I'm very glad because she's not even a villain in the end. Like she's very
she's just a
relatable.
scared kid.
Yeah,
like we all are.
And we all are. It's just, I think it's a movie that was needed now. That's why it had so much success as well, because we want to see these bold choices. We're tired of the same old, Hollywood structured film. It's good to see this, and even like just the whole film, like not just the plot, but the way it's structured. It kind of breaks the classical Hollywood narrative. I
think this movie proves to you that, again, if you truly love this art, if you truly love movies and filmmaking, you can do it. They didn't require that much budget to make this movie, and it feels like it needed $2 billion to be made because of how loud and eccentric and big it seems like a massive project that's been done sort of like homemade, like, and it's really inspiring. I think it's so beautiful, and it has such a beautiful message. You will get out of the theater thinking a little bit more positively about life. You have a much positive outlook on life, which I think is really hard to achieve.
That's very true, and it's like a warm hug.
It really is. It's like someone made you tea and said it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
I did not expect a movie to make me feel like that. Like someone just hugged me, as you said, gave me a cup of tea and said it's gonna be fine. Just believe in yourself. Let it go. Things will happen. It's that
nothing
sort of
matters.
Like nothing matters. Only what matters, and anything else doesn't really matters. It's such a beautiful message, and I did not expect that type of message from this movie. That is probably the most unpredictable thing about this unpredictable movie.
Yeah.
It makes you feel so sort of like full of love and joy and hope.
Yeah. Very glad that we saw it, and that we saw it in the cinema. Support your cinemas. But yeah, I'm very, very happy with the movie. I think it was what it was hyped up to be.
I'm happy it won Best Picture.
Yeah.
And I recommend you guys watching it. Let us know what you thought about it in the comment
and
section.
who your favorite character was. Mine was the husband.
Mine is the raccoon.
Oh, that's fair. That's very fair, actually.
I love the raccoon. I don't know who's dubbing that raccoon, but he needs an Oscar.
We need to check.
Because
Also,
it's really good.
I just remember this, so I'll add it really quickly. I'll probably cut it too, but I found it really interesting that, you know how at the beginning she gives all the tax returns and she's like, oh, what do you have a karaoke machine? And she's like, oh, I'm a singer. And Jamie Lee Curtis is like, oh, you're also a writer and you're also this and you're also that.
Yeah.
And then at the end she actually is. So like it's just a very nice kind of callback and way to round it up. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, thank you so much for listening or watching. And we'll see you next Monday at 6:10, like every week. Let us know what we should comment on next. Subscribe!